Hey, welcome back. We're going to continue on with the projects, but not on this video. One thing I really realized is there's a lot of interest in the videos in setting up MQTT and Home Assistant. And what I realized is there's a lot of people struggling. And what I don't want to have happen is people are unable to enjoy the projects and basically do the projects because of a computer software problem. So we're going to do a couple of videos. Do one on how to debug MQTT, basically the steps that you go through, and then we'll do the same thing for Home Assistant. So this is the MQTT video. I broke them up so it's easier to look through. I hope you enjoy. So let's start at the beginning. You have a Home Assistant system running, and maybe you have MQTT running too, but it's not working. So let's start by looking through very methodically how to figure out what's going wrong. So if you had an issue where you tried to get someone like a secretary to run down to the store, send a letter for you, and someone called you and said, hey, that letter never got here weeks later, there would be a series of steps you do to figure out what went wrong. And you'd start with asking your secretary if it got to the post office, and then you'd go to the post office and you'd figure out where it went from there. And that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to start with the most local issue. We're going to start on the actual computer that everything's running on, and we're going to work out from there. Because what could have gone wrong is the program isn't running. It could be that it's running but it's not authenticating properly because you're using the wrong user. That could be working, but then it's not able to talk over the network. So we're going to start small and verify step by step that everything's running properly. And if at any point it doesn't work for you, that's where you have to investigate. So step one, the question is it actually running? So we're going to start with MQTT because that's really the backbone of our system. That's what talks to everything. And Home Assistant really, we're going to leave it for the next video. We're going to keep it separate. So the question of is it running can usually on a Linux system be answered by the command ps. And actually ps-ax, what that's going to give you is a list of all the programs that are running on your system, but we don't really want a list of all of them. So what we use is we use this little, we call it a pipe symbol, this guy. It's a vertical bar. And what that does is it takes the output of the command to the left and gives it to whatever command you write on the right. So we're going to use grep, and what grep does is it takes text that it gets and it searches for a term. So we want to see mosquito. I'm going to be lazy and only type in mosque. And lo and behold, what we see here is two things are running. This first one is PS will pretty much always return itself as well. So, well, not really itself, but where it piped to. So PS ran and it piped to grep, and this first line is not what we're interested in because that's basically the command we just ran. But what we can see is the second line is mosquito itself is actually running. It's in memory. Beautifully, mosquito actually will tell you which configuration file it's using. So step one, check mosquito is running. Step two is we want to have a look at our configuration file. And you can see on this window that's where I'm looking because the configuration file actually includes anything that it finds in this directory. And what I want to point out is how simple this is. So it's got its password file that it points at, and the listener, sometimes the how-tos that tell you how to set up Mosquito will tell you what interface to listen to. And I find that for some reason that doesn't seem to work very well at all. So if your security is sort of set up like mine where There is a firewall to keep everything out of the computer, and we'll talk about the firewall next because that's one of the things that can go wrong. And then there's another firewall to keep people out of your local network. Then I don't really see an issue with basically Mosquitto listening on every interface on the computer. Some people will disagree. Some of the real paranoid guys will freak out. But that's not an issue for us. And then this you don't really need right now. I have it on there, but it's locked into the computer anyway. The firewall doesn't let it do anything. So this is one of the issues that I found where I took out everything on this one line after the 1883 because that's the port it runs on, and that's what allowed the system to work. So next we're going to see if we have our firewall running. I'm not checking to see every possible firewall that you might run. I'm going to check the most common one. And you can see you actually have to run it as root to check out the status. So on a Ubuntu based system, it will actually let you run sudo. That's the easiest way. Instead of logging in as root, you just run everything as a normal user, but it has root privileges. And then if you get a whole screen like this where it's telling you what's allowed and what's not, then you do have a firewall. And what you want to check is to see if 1883 is allowed. And that's exactly what's allowed right there. And you can also see I was wrong in what I said before. I don't actually lock down 8083. Still not an issue. So what we want to do next is we want to make sure that Mosquitto is actually working. Now sometimes when you're trying to get it working, you might try to pull out a device and have it connect to the Mosquitto. But what we want to start small here. What we're going to do is we're going to have Mosquitto talk to Mosquitto on the same computer. So we're going to have a client publish something and a client subscribe to something on the same computer. So you can see in this line, there's a program that comes with Mosquitto called Mosquitto Sub, and that means it's going to subscribe to something. -T is for topic. So I randomly selected home/sensors. You can use pretty well whatever you want. And then because we have, or at least I have, a username and password to log into MTT, into Mosquitto, I do -U, and this is my test server, so it's just MTT user, and my password's the same. This is just a test server that I use only for these videos. And so you'll see nothing happens. But what it's doing is it's sitting there and it's now subscribed to that, and any time that Mosquitto sees that someone has published on this topic, it'll send it here. So what we're going to do is on the same computer, we're going to use a separate terminal window here. We're actually going to publish something on there. And here I am too lazy to type it in again. So here's our publish line. It's very, very similar to the subscribe, except instead of sub, it's pub. Again, you have your topic, and I made the topic the same. The big difference here is there's a -M, and what -M is what is after the -M is the message you want to send. And then, of course, we have our username and password, because Mosquitto won't listen to you if you don't give it that. And you can see as soon as I published that, it came up and it was noticed on the subscribe side. And you can see you can put pretty well anything in here, and when you publish it, the subscribe side will see it. So if you try to do this, this is the first thing. When you're trying to subscribe to something, the first thing you'll see is whether or not you can connect to the server. That's a good way to confirm that your username and password that you think it is correct. That's a good way to confirm that everything's running. If you're not able to subscribe to anything on your system, then something's wrong. That's what you should be investigating. And then, of course, being able to publish to it, that's just a way to make sure it's all running. So now we know for sure Mosquitto's running, Mosquitto's functioning properly, and it's able to talk to clients on the same computer. So that's not really super useful to us yet. What we want to be able to do is talk to it from other computers. So we're going to have another computer on the network connect to it. So you can do that various ways. There's some Android apps that you can download, and you can actually subscribe and publish from those apps. I'm going to, just for simplicity's sake, we're going to look at a Windows one. This is a random one I've never tried before. It runs on Java. It's called MQTT Spy. So I'll have a link down in the description. But this is the one you want, and I just downloaded version 1. So once it's running, it'll look like this. I haven't tried it yet, but let's see if we can get a connection going. So a new connection window comes up. Connection name, that's any name. We can just call it duh. We'll leave this as auto resolve. Big thing we got to change here though is our server. So the IP address of my server happens to be 192.168.190 on the local network. You can make something up here. That's just basically what your client's going to tell the Mosquitto server what it's called. And the other thing you got to check, if you have your username and login there, is whether or not you need to type in your username and password. So I'm going to tell mine that it's predefined. So strangely enough, it complained about the configuration, but it's still connected. Guess this one's a little wonky. Beautifully though, when I give it the same topic that we're subscribed to on the system, it actually comes up. So we published it remotely from this computer. So just so you know what's going on here, I don't want to confuse you too much, but this window right here is running on the computer that I'm screen capturing here, and these windows behind it are actually connected over the network to the computer that runs Mosquitto. So the way you can look at it is this window on the front is one computer, and these windows on the back are on a different computer. So you can see that as I publish here, it's able to publish to the Mosquitto server, and anything that's subscribed to that topic can see it. So then if we try to subscribe to the same thing on this remote computer, let's see that the remote computer is seeing it, and you can see, yep, sure enough, every time I click, the number of messages goes up, and it shows that what we typed in came up. And it changes when we change it. So this pretty well shows that our MQTT server is absolutely running well, and if you're having issues and you got this far without having to change anything, then MQTT is not your problem. So we're gonna end our video here. The next video that we're going to look at, I'll publish in a day or so. We're going to look at Home Assistant, and we're going to look at the different configurations and where to look if something's not running. Thanks a lot. So that's just a simple methodical approach to looking through and making sure your MQTT server is working. You want to make sure it's not the one causing all your problems if you have any problems. And the next thing we're going to look at is Home Assistant and some of the things you can look at to make sure it's running properly. And after that, we'll get back to the projects. Thanks. Oh, like, share, subscribe.